Can we all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I know. Thanks a lot, and I hope you all had a great Thanksgiving. I did. It was a busy one, and there's been a lot of lake action the last 2 weeks, so Jesse.
The notice requirements of the Open Public Meeting law be met by transmitting the notice to the regular meeting, the commissioner's official newspaper on October 2019, posting the notice where required, and posting the notice with the commission clerk. Allenhurst?
Here.
Asbury Park? Here. Interlaken?
Here.
Neptune? Ocean?
Here.
I'm going to do the meeting a little bit different tonight. We're going to do resolution to approve the minutes, a resolution to approve the treasurer's report, and then the budget. Do resolution 1957, a resolution to approve the minutes of the regular meeting from October 17, 2019. Someone please offer.
So moved. A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
On resolution 1958, a resolution to approve the treasurer's report and pay bills. Anyone have any?
Our CFO is here, Tom.
The balance on hand in the previous month in Metaspont total was $133,517.48. There were receipts of $229.68. There were disbursements of $25,242.64 with an ending balance of $108,504.52.
Someone please offer.
I offer.
Second.
A second.
Could I ask a question, Maureen? I received a note from Ken McGee that he had submitted for payment that hasn't been paid yet. The two payments that he submitted since, I think he said September.
Who was that?
Ken McGee, the wetlands.
I didn't see him.
No, he submitted it to the office, to Jesse's
Oh,
office.
Jesse, okay.
He said he wrote to you to ask about it. I'm just sharing that.
He wrote to me.
Yeah, he sent you an email, I think he said yesterday.
The only thing I got was the bill from $131.88, which is,
And I included,
was there something separate?
there was the other one we had talked about that he put in 400, we said we had already gotten paid.
Dinner?
We paid him.
Dinner.
400. And I think we only owed him 200 and he put it for 400.
Okay, then I misunderstood. We can process a check for next month.
The next one, January?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'll sign it.
We do have the one for the 131.88.
Okay, I know we talked about it, but I thought it was that we had to.
And Jeannie, if you mentioned, just tell him to CC me on that, just too.
Okay,
Okay.
I'll sign it.
Because I don't understand.
Allenhurst?
Yes.
Asbury Park?
Yes.
Interlaken?
Yes.
Ocean?
Yes.
Okay. And we also have resolution 19060, a resolution to approve the proposed budget and assessments for 2020. Does anybody have any questions on it?
I did not. This is the, what was the final total on that? It was two total, right?
It's
Carried over.
$79,000 in revenue
Got it. Okay.
and $79,000 in anticipated expenditures. Obviously, if we don't spend, we'll accrue to surplus
Correct.
at the end of the year. So it's basically just setting up the appropriations so that we have what we believe that we're going to need to carry us through the year.
And the grants are still there,
Yes.
carrying over.
Right, and I think you see the balances that we're carrying forward.
Got it. Okay, thanks.
Could someone please offer?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Allenhurst?
Yes.
Asbury Park?
Yes.
Interlaken?
Yes.
Ocean?
Yes.
Oh, the audit, that's right. I'm sorry. Everybody reviewed the audit?
Yes.
Yes.
We have resolution
The
1958.
nice thick audit. It's very thorough.
The 2018 audit report. Someone please offer.
I'll offer.
And then I'll get my son.
Okay, that's all they need to do.
That's all.
I'll second that.
Those who are here, you can just indicate yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, and I have 2 copies, one for us, the second one tomorrow.
Someone please offer.
Calendars.
Second.
Motion.
Allenhurst.
Yes.
Asbury Park.
Yes.
Interlaken.
Yes.
Ocean.
Yes.
Okay, just before you leave tonight, and then need everybody to sign these affidavits.
Now, I have one more financial thing, and this is for approval of and it's for payment, so Ocean will be paying this for the electrification project, and this is Precise Construction. This was their bill for certified by Peter's team, $124,415.84. We have a letter from Peter here verifying, is that correct?
Yes, so far they've worked on really the surge chamber, putting in the grates. We've ordered the knife gate. There's been a few little modifications that we're gonna have to make with the grate. It was ADA compliant, but
Yeah, we'll get into it, but I'm just talking financials.
financials, yeah, we're right on target.
And the electric also is going
And
into it.
yes,
So the motion is to approve the,
I don't think we have to because we're submitting it to Ocean.
I was told we had to approve it here and then it goes to Ocean. That was the process. Is that?
I'm sorry.
Well, I think
We-
they wanted you to review
We
it.
have to review it, approve it, and send it to Ocean for payment. Is that correct?
Right.
Okay.
And these, I presume I haven't been introduced here from Avakian's office?
yes, it's not very enough for a while yet.
So, that's fine.
Yeah.
So that's the motion to approve and refer it to Ocean for payment.
Yes.
That's my motion.
I second.
Okay.
Allenhurst.
Right, yes.
Asbury Park.
Yes.
Interlaken.
Yes.
Ocean.
Yes. And Jesse, I'll hand this to you. And you can relay it to Steve.
They probably won't have bills.
That goes directly to Precise.
Yes.
Any questions for me?
Does anybody have any questions for the CFO on the commission? I'm looking.
Okay.
I don't think I have any.
None. You know how you know.
We do. Thank you, Howard.
Happy holidays.
Okay, you're doing
Yeah,
good.
but no,
One second. By the way, normally Lorraine wouldn't be here, but Jessie was thinking she wasn't going to be here today, so that's why we have both. She was going to. Lorraine was our previous clerk and CFO. And she's still our CFO, so she was going to wear 2 hats tonight. I'm glad she's here, just in case Jessie couldn't make it.
Thank you.
We're going to move right into fuel electrification.
Okay, so currently we've been working on the surge chamber, as I mentioned previously. We have the grading up, which is going to be our new grading, ADA compliant, really sturdy material for access, for everyone that comes that way through the public access that's there. One thing that we've kind of noticed in the grading system is the ability to look down.
Right.
So we're going to modify the 2 grates that are in the middle of the system to accommodate the, basically allow for a viewport for the knife gate that we're going to be installing. All those systems have been.
And can you explain that to the audience?
Yeah, so basically, where do you want me to explain the knife gating
Thanks,
system?
yeah.
Basically, with this grant opportunity, we have the ability to electrify the gatehouse and also provide additional storm protection with a manual knife gate that can actually be lowered in the surge chamber during a storm event. So it's
A major storm, like hurricane.
Yeah, anything major. So a very similar system that we've done in Rec Pond in Spring Lake, working really well because that system is now in place since hurricane or Superstorm Sandy. So everything is seems to be going fine. We have shop drawings that have already come in. We've ordered the system that we're going to be putting in place. But it's just a gate that will come down and stop water. And it'll protect us during a surge event, allowing us to also operate the gatehouse independently, so we're not working the gatehouse gates that are currently there and stressing that system out. So it's another layer of protection, it really is what it is. So we found the system working really well in Spring Lake, so we're applying it now to Deal Lake. So we're really fortunate with the grant funding that we received. So that was really a blessing that we got that we were able to find that. So we're hoping that in the next storm event we're prepared much better than we were with Sandy and I.
If you know the area, the old grates were just pipes, and the pipes were 4 or 5 inches apart. You could put your foot right through it, dogs could fall through it. It was really unsafe, and they're rusting out. So it's going to be a lot safer situation. And now you got an extra 1.5 feet to peer out on the ocean, so the sand and water won't fall into it.
Exactly.
It's a much better situation.
With the surge chamber as well, we've also added an extra foot to stop sand intrusion from coming in and blowing in. So we're hoping that this way it keeps the chamber open and clean, and the knife gate working properly so that we don't have any blockages with sand.
Nice. And now, I don't know if you know it, but the electric was put in yesterday.
Yes.
The electric pipe was put in, and they're going to run the conduit later this week. Asbury Park's also in major rehab over there. If you have been down the East End, they're redoing the whole Deal Lake Drive, sidewalks, curbs. Eventually, it's going to be pavement. It's a big deal. They're ripping up the asphalt walkway that was along the lake, putting a different kind of walkway in, this concrete walkway. While they were doing that, they drove metal pipe through our existing line. So Sunday night when I went down at 11:30 to open up the plume, I did it by hand, which my wife really loved. She waited for me in the car. Anyway, so we got it closed the other day. You know, so it's a little bit lower. That's one of the reasons I wanted a little bit more water lake. Plus, they were working on the gates themselves.
And
I have a question about that. During what parts of the construction will require that the lake be lowered to do the work?
Well, interesting enough, it was going to be with the basically rehabbing the 2 existing gates that are in the gatehouse. And what was really interesting with the contractor is that they've opted to use underground scuba divers. So they had divers in the water, and they actually have already done the work. So other than a little bit of more modification that we're going to be doing underneath the actual structure itself, we're going to be doing some concrete and foundation footing work there. There really won't notice any kind of lowering. It's going to be very minimal.
Okay.
So it's actually worked out the way the contractor's means and methods.
Yeah, we shouldn't need any further excessive lowering. We probably won't.
Really, you won't even notice.
That's great, thank you.
The other thing was if you go down here, take a look at the concrete right in front of the building. It's exposed right now, and you'll see these concrete beams coming out from the building. And they were put in, I think, 1921, is that correct?
Yes, it's, the building dates back to the 20s.
And so you'll see the construction, it's every 2 feet there's an I-beam with concrete covering. You'll see a piece of it, but it's pretty impressive. And there's more I-beams going down into the ground, holding that building up over the lake. It survived a lot of storms, and the construction was wonderful. I think Peter's father was the original designer.
It might even predate him a little bit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a big deal, so it's neat to look at. And so that's all that concrete's gonna be removed in front of the building, all the way over to Lock Harbor and redone, so it's gonna be, and we're also tying into the Asbury Park piece. We actually, Asbury Park, the contractor there, did not pour a section so we could get our electric under, so we're gonna pour that for them, so that's all gonna be comprehensive and blend in beautifully to that whole area.
Everything has been ordered and the contractors, hopefully will be actuators and everything in January.
That's very cool, that's good.
And when do you think you'll have it completed, roughly?
Roughly, I would hope before, weather depending, if we get a snowstorm, before the spring.
There'll be painting issues we can't do constantly.
There'll be a few, because we're also doing security cameras, a
Right.
weather station, there's a bit of electrical, we're gonna have, with the actuators, you'll be able to control them remotely with computer systems. So some of those things might be happening in the spring, because we just can't,
Yeah. so you'll be
you
testing
can't
it.
expose some of that stuff to the elements until we get it in place.
Right.
And police will be able to know when the gate's open, because there'll be a green light on when the gates are open.
There'll also be a lighting mechanism to let you know what gate is open at what time.
Right.
So we're really kind of bringing it up to
Right. And you're
a really
gonna
full
have-
automation.
And we're having gauges, a gauge.
A gauge, there'll be good gauges, multiple gauges throughout the lake, so we'll know, where we're at. So, the residents, especially some of the residents in Ocean, who are really in the lower lying areas, will be able to see the benefit of it.
Got it. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
In relation to the Lock Harbor Bridge, no update on that. I'm still trying to work with the county on getting material out of the lake that was left in, so still dealing with that. 319 grant. This is a $735,000 grant we received from the state of New Jersey for clean water. We're teamed up with Leslie Lake, Sunset Lake, and ourselves. We're the lead agency on the project.
So what's really been happening there is we're having a bit of a struggle with underground utilities. So we've picked a few locations. Those locations haven't been fruitful in the sense that the underground utilities are going to be it's so compacted there that you're not able to find a space for what we're looking for. We're basically looking for a manufactured treatment device that will basically handle about 88 acres, very similar to the system we put in at Comstock back in 2008. The Comstock system is roughly 30 feet in length by 20 feet wide, and I want to say almost 10 feet in depth. It's really a monster of a system, but the Comstock system that we have in place now for at least a decade has been really successful in taking plastics out of the lake and also taking any suspended solids out of the lake. So we're looking to repeat that on the other line that goes right on the other side of the high school, on the
Which runs back to basically the post office in Asbury, all along the railroad tracks.
Yeah, so we've had really great success, so we want to repeat that. So the crux of the problem is finding where that big system can fit underground and not interrupt New Jersey Transit, the gas, water, sewer, all the Verizon utilities are all underground. So I think we have found a system on Memorial Drive between Sunset Avenue and Fifth Avenue, and that seems to be where we're going to be putting the big system. And we've also, with Sunset Lake, found two viable locations at Fifth Avenue and Grand Avenue intersection, and then again at Sunset Avenue and Grand Avenue on the other side of the bridge to treat. Those little subsystems will treat about 44 acres and 22 acres.
There was a thought of treating it downstream, and it was just too much utilities. So it's easier to order smaller systems upstream and feed the lake, and it would cleaner walking water. A majority, like, what is it, about half the water going into the lake is being treated by those two systems?
If we get this one on Memorial Drive.
No, I'm talking about Sunset.
Oh, yes, absolutely, yeah. Yeah, we're getting the, I guess you could say the north and the south. Right. We're grabbing both sides of the lake.
Does it remove oils Or needs?
Yes, the systems that we're looking at are gonna do nutrients, metals, bacteria, oils, grease, plastics.
Jack, you want to talk about the flooding wetlands too?
Yeah, so in addition to what Matt was talking about, we're working together and trying to find not just more locations, and I'm pretty excited actually about those locations upstream of Sunset. After speaking with them, they want to be able to be part of this as much as anybody else, and in Westerly Lake as well. So hearing that that's going to be going upstream is going to be pretty helpful. And from our perspective, our firm is very much, our philosophy is about addressing things upstream, before it even gets to the water anyway.
Sure.
So this is, this is very much along the lines of what we'd like to see. In addition to that, so we are looking at bioinfiltration basins, essentially areas that are drained into essentially a rain garden, more or less, but that does have infrastructure underneath to also, again, capture suspended solids, but also get the nutrients out by feeding plants. A couple of the green infrastructure projects that we're trying to implement are floating wetland islands, so a platform with a bunch of plants on it that will take up nutrients in lake or in the water. And haven't really gotten too far on that because at this point what we're waiting on is the state to approve in advance of the funding, because this is a reimbursement type grant, and we have, in order to get the money, we have to ask the state. And I think, I kind of wish Lorraine was here because she's also been trying to reach out to the state. I'm sure I would get a whole lot more of an answer from her, but have you heard from JDEP? The answer is probably no. I've reached out to DEP.
If we need a conference call with Russ, we can do it.
Yeah, I don't know if, I'm not sure if Russ is the one. Yeah.
Russ, great.
Yeah. Yeah, we could work that out. I'm working with him on other grants anyway.
Okay.
So that would not be a.
If you get him on the phone, call me.
Right, fair
The
enough.
hard part is getting him on the phone. So
Yeah,
you get him
exactly.
real meeting.
But we do have them planned for Sunset Lake, a series of 6 along the south, actually more the west, the southwest corner, because it's the deepest right there. And it turns out that's where an aeration system had been, the area had been dredged for an aeration system at one point. So, and when I say the deepest, typically floating wetland islands are not great in deep areas. This is not a deep lake though. So deep is like 8 to 10 feet. Yeah, it tops, so when I say 8 to 10 feet, it has about 2 to 3 feet of muck. So the floating wetland island, in order for it to float and not take root, which I'll explain is a good thing, we need roughly 3 to 4 feet of water, and then whatever's under that's fine. But the plants on the island will not take up the nutrients as effectively if they root into some sort of substrate, because that's where they get the nutrients. They have to be floating in order to take the nutrients out of the lake itself. So that's why we picked that area. Otherwise, it's about a foot or so. I came to the July meeting, and it may have smelled a little funny because I was actually in the lake and got a little wet to doing those measurements. So we found a great spot for them. We can have, I can't remember the numbers off the top of my head, but it's a decent amount of pollutant removal. That said, beyond the actual BMPs themselves that we're trying to work out, we will be having the first of a series, if you don't mind passing this, the first of a series of informational meetings for various municipal authorities like city managers or mayors, planning board members, commissioners like yourselves on lake commissions, and these informational meetings are to achieve our outreach and education objectives so that people understand the point of this whole project, what the bigger picture is, what the money is going towards, how to continue to live with these improvements after we get them installed. Now, what I've passed out to you guys, and I have a couple extra copies if people want to see them at some point. This is a really rough draft. This is pretty much just an outline
It's a working copy.
It is, because I'm not, so it shows that, I'm gonna go through, at least for the first meeting, what we'll go through is what a 319 grant and what the program is all about, what green infrastructure is, why it's valuable, why it's gonna be useful as stormwater management, and how, what we'll do for the quality of the water in the lakes. And then I go essentially through the examples of various BMPs, the best management practices, these stormwater improvements that we're going to be implementing. Those I do have examples of in here. That's one of the things I was able to put together relatively quickly. And then what's really important, like I said, what's going to happen after we actually just put them in? Put them in and then go. Well, then what? Okay. So making sure that the townships and the DPW groups understand how to keep them working after we put them in. So maintenance needs are also going to be addressed, and for the most part, this style, green infrastructure, tends to have less maintenance anyway, so this should be a pretty low
But we are
intensity
Well,
push.
one thing we got to include is basic road cleaning, stormwater, grate cleaning.
Right.
Because the other towns don't have it. It's really going to be an Asbury effort right now.
Okay.
Maybe a little ocean.
Well, and that falls under, so when we talk about BMPs, we have the structural BMPs, which are things that Avakian and myself and Princeton Hydro are getting implemented, but then there are also non-structural BMPs, which cover things like removing pet waste and, kind of impervious cover limits or street sweeping, all that cleaning grates, all that does count too. So that's the kind of thing that we're going to impress upon the people who attend to, there are these things that we need that are going into the lake that will help the water quality that need to be, at least monitored and occasionally maintained, but also in order to keep them functioning, you got to do some other stuff around town too. It's like, don't eat as much sugar, but also brush your teeth.
If you notice when the lake's low, you'll see the areas that are piled up with material. That's where usually outside a storm drain. So that's coming from the grate. So we get the material before it hits the lake. It's a lot cheaper to remove from those systems than scoop it out of the lake.
Absolutely.
Jack, one of the things that, and I assume this is where Steve was talking about when these breakfast meetings are done. We spoke about providing lakefront homeowners via the DPW or the home, whoever's issuing the permits on properties to lakefront homeowners when they first move in or they're renovating their property or whatever they're doing, adding on, that we have some kind of a list to give to homeowners so that they know, just like when they're going to build on their home and they need to have the electrical the inspector or the plumbing, that there are specific
But we're going to work on that. We got number one we got to do is get the update, others updates to the website, and we can mention that at the meeting. But the focus is meeting specifically for this particular project.
Right.
It's a 319 program.
Right.
So I think it's a
But we
good
got to
idea.
add, we can add it.
It's certainly not.
Definitely add it.
We got
I think we should have a reference on our website, and we can provide that to them. They now know where to go to see that information that we talked about before.
Yeah, Steve is the one that suggested creating a list to give to the municipalities so that they have something to take to people and give to them when they.
But hopefully we'll be the keepers of that at our website, and then the town people change. They can go to our website and refresh their memory.
Yeah, this is specifically for the things that we're about to put into the lakes and the stormwater management system. I do think is a great idea, and it's going to be something useful for the rest of the municipalities to push to their residents to say, hey, look, we have this information that should be followed if you're going to own a house on this body of water.
It's going to be a very focused meeting. It's only going to be an hour and 15 minutes,
Right.
and an hour and a half, including lunch. So it's really focused.
Correct. There are going to be three, and I'm glad you're bringing that up because the first one will be, and I say the first one, and I still haven't told you when it is, I think, January 8th. It's not the beginning of December as we were talking about in October. A few things have changed since then. So it's going to be January 8th at 11 a.m. I believe. at the Lock Harbor Village's upstairs room, and, but like I said, there will be multiples, so we're gonna have another one.
It's invitational for the most part.
Yes, it is invitation only. Again, because this is meant for the municipalities, commissioners, DPW, city planners, people who are making decisions, I'm gonna be dealing with actual direct interaction with the structures long-term. But again, that doesn't necessarily mean that this information will not be available. It can be put into the list. We'll certainly share it with the commission. And if that goes on the website, that would be fine. I think that's a good way to, I think that's a good way to disseminate this information to other people who want it. That's up to the commission. I'll defer.
Okay.
I will defer to the board.
Okay.
But so the rest of the meetings, there will be one in later in the spring, closer to the actual installation of the floating wetland islands, provided we get the advanced funding in time. And that'll be to garner support from residents and potentially volunteers to help us to plant the plants in the floating wetland islands, potentially move them. They do get heavy, but we get them in the water first, they'll float, so it should be a little easier to work with. And then later in the summer, early fall of next year, once everything's been planted and established, you get to see what the floating islands have done, and then we'll kind of review with DPW folks and the rest of the municipality, essentially maintenance, and say, okay, now that they're here and they're working, what do we do to keep them going? And what other BMPs are going to be going in? Hopefully at that point we'll have a better idea where the contact.
Especially by January.
We should have contracts in place in the winter.
Right.
For both BMPs.
And it's going to be important to understand the maintenance of those as well. So that's what I've got.
Okay.
We have no dates.
I want to keep rolling. Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Organic material removal, Fireman's Pond, Ocean Township's working that's moving along. I don't know the latest, but I know they're moving on. Water testing, Monmouth University. Thank you, Jeannie, for putting that notice out in the email system. And how many people do we get to
We have
help out?
7. January 18th, we're going to be, and if anybody here wants to come.
And that's going to Monmouth University, right?
No,
Where's that?
actually, we needed a place on the lake, and I asked Eileen Chapman, and she has volunteered for a place graciously. I will give it a D place on the
And
lake.
that's with Ross Aboff and his team?
January 18th from 10 to 12, if you would like to become a citizen scientist trained by Dr. Adolph from Monmouth University's CLONET program. We needed more people to do that on the lake. I spoke
great.
with him, and so he said, okay, and he's ordering the kits, and we can train up to
Perfect.
20. So anybody interested, or if you know anybody, and we'll be sending it out to our email, and if you would like to, Laura, also share it with your group, that would be great too, anybody else.
Okay.
We have January 18th as our date, just.
Good. Very good, very good. Ship and sniff. I welcome the Clean Ocean Action folks. We have a presentation right now on the results, findings. We've been working with them for a couple of years now on tracking down bulky sewer lines or access points for human waste. And so the process we do, and they'll go through it real quick, but it uses dogs, and the dogs are trained to smell human waste, as cadaver dogs are to smell cadaver. So, ladies,
Yes. Hi, everybody. I will try to make it really brief. Thank you, Don, for giving us the opportunity to come today and talk to all of you and just share what's been going on in the watershed. My name is Swarnava Krishnan. I'm the staff scientist in Clean Ocean Action. She's Alison McCarthy, Coastal Watershed Protection Coordinator, and we work pretty close together. And the model that we took here is the ship and sniff study. How it started was Clean Ocean Action already did ship and sniff in the Navasink watershed, which took off in a bigger way. Right now we're working on the Rally for the Navasink Coalition to restore the impaired, waterways over there. So 2016, we started this collaboration with the DLA Commission, and the goal was we have to implement an canine ship and sniff study. So for identifying potential human sources of fecal contamination in the watershed, and there is the group or the company that does this is Environmental Canine Services, located out of Maine, but they do have offices around the country. They have been It's a family-run business, and they have been stormwater consultants and professionals for a number of years. And the concept of canine testing is pretty much utilizing the scent testing ability of the dogs, except in this case, these dogs are specifically and exclusively trained only to detect human fecal sources. So this is kind of a great way to potentially look at sources, problem sources where you have leaky infrastructure, sewage issues, and as we like to say, this is only a screening tool. It helps you get to identifying the problem faster and in a relatively shorter period of time and relatively inexpensive technique. So what is involved in ship and sniff? As the name indicates, you ship the samples to a remote location. The dogs are not physically present here, although that is another part that can be done as well. The dogs sniff them, and each of these bottles and alert. How the alert happens is each dog is trained uniquely. So one dog may bark, one dog may sit, one dog may wag the tail. So each one has its own kind of signage that it uses or that it's trained in to alert for the possible presence of human fecal contaminants. And so in this particular study with the Lake Commission, Clean Ocean Action is the facilitator. We've been working, and next one please. So how did we go about this? We wanted to plan out a strategy, and we met with the DLA Commission, Don, and the other town engineers. So where we went through, kind of reviewed what studies have been done here in terms of bacteria, monitoring and identification and assessment. Then we kind of zoned in on, what could be the immediate needs that needed to be, looked at and investigated. And the criteria for this was because this is a huge watershed, so the location, public access was very important, land accessibility was very important, and key thing is, as I've been hearing it being mentioned here time and again, citizen engagement, community engagement and participation is very, very important. And so how it came about was, so this was going to be a tiered sampling strategy. So the first priority testing was about 24 locations around the different, waterways here. I'm going to show them. And originally it was 24, but interestingly, the day of sampling, we actually had to add 2 more potential, sources that we thought may benefit from the additional, sampling and investigation. And once we did this mapping, this meeting, it was all desk-related work, but then we actually wanted to make sure that we had the details correct. So Dawn and a couple others and staff from Clean Ocean Action, we went around these 24 locations to just site scoping. Is it really feasible to bring citizen volunteers and collect the samples? Quality is important, all of those things. So we did a site scoping, and we eventually finalized on the locations. As you can see, there are 20 locations. I'm going to leave a copy of the presentation that you can share.
Yeah.
So the map just highlights the locations that were selected for this round of study. And so yeah, some pictures to show you how we went about looking at the possibilities and the feasibility. And how we wanted to do was chip and sniff is because the dogs are specifically trained to detect human fecal sources. Now what is happening is the scent threshold of the dog kind of varies. It can really detect very low levels, although it cannot be quantified, and it can really detect extremely high levels as well. And as we all know, wet weather is a huge problem. Every time it rains, it brings in a huge load of bacteria, and every time there's a leaky infrastructure issue, then you're kind of compounding the problem. So we want to do the test in 2 phases. One was, just do it in ambient weather, dry conditions. Go around the same 24 locations, test it, and find get the results. And repeat the same test under, good wet event and see how it matches. And citizen science came into the picture. This can't be done with, 2 people, 3 people. So what we did was we needed to train the people to actually know what needs to be done. And the training has to be done in such a way that they all realize the importance of quality assurance in all these samples, because we are talking of bacteria. So any little bit of compromise is going to completely compromise the integrity of the sample. And so what came about was we did we wrapped up both rounds, the ambient testing and the wet weather testing, but it took very long for us to kind of really zone in on the right event for the wet weather. Ambient was fine. In 2016 we did it, but then, so many, factors added to this.
Yeah, the ways during the work week, right?
Yes.
That was the biggest one.
Yes, yeah. So eventually, we finished over the summer, the wet weather testing as well, the same 24 plus 2, 26 locations. And the testing is actually done remotely by the dogs in duplicate. So it's not just one sniff. It's basically going to be, if a sample is tested positive, if a dog alerts, then it will be repeat tested. And so you get some kind of authentication of the result or the response the dogs are giving. So as you can see, I tried to summarize it. What happened was, you can see a distinct difference, and of course the confirmation that we all know that wet weather does impact, the bacteria issue and potential human sources here. So there were 2 positive alerts. When we did in dry weather, there were only 2 locations that actually had tested positive, like double alerts came. Compared to, in wet weather, it was actually 15 locations actually came up, positive, indicating, potential problems. One positive alert, what it means is like one dog may alert that it is testing, it is sensing something, the other dog may not. It's again in the variable threshold. And so when we did it during the wet weather, of course, the balance tilted, so it became 8 locations were having just one positive alert. As we like to call it, it's a mixed alert. So it's not neither, confirming nor, refuting that. And there were no alerts in the sense like both dogs or both times when they're tested, the dogs don't care. Like when they come to the field, you have to see that to understand it, because what will happen is even if you just show, these locations, they will just not be interested. They can just walk past. So that's what is meant by no alert, which indicates that these are the clear areas that you don't have to really worry about. So having seen this type of a pattern, then we went into evaluating the results. So we are seeing a mixed effect. So there is an effect from rain, there is potentially, and if there's no effect at all. So moving forward, now what do we do? It's a screening tool, but you need to really know the quantification. You need to know the extent of the pollution. So how do we determine which areas need your immediate attention, especially with the projects that are going on in this area? So we try to prioritize it. So the first priority is the high. Number 1 is high to 4 is lower. The high priority is given to those areas which actually had positive alerts regardless of weather conditions. Both ambient and wet weather, these locations did indicate, that there could be problems. So there were 4 of those locations. Then priority 2 was they did not have any positive alerts at all when you tested them in their ambient conditions. But what really happened was it reversed, and you did have positive alerts when a wet weather event sampling was done. So those were the 12 locations. And priority 3 was whether it was ambient, whether it was wet weather, irrespective of that, they had the dogs really behaved differently. One dog would say positive, another dog would. Why it happens is because the sensitivity is so high. Sometimes there could be remnants from an earlier event, an earlier infrastructure fix, an earlier leave. It could be wind that is driving it. So there are so many factors. So mixed alerts is we assigned a priority 3. And priority 4 was those 2 locations which were seemingly fine because it was no alert in both types of sampling conditions. So this is the map. So we tried to put it like the reds are the priority 1. As you can see from here, you have the Colonial Terrace, then you have the Fireman's Pond. Then there are 2 locations on the Lake Drive here. So Edgemont, and the other location is the additional location that was across the street, and there was an outfall. As we were sampling under ambient weather, we were seeing a discharge, which theoretically should not be, base flow was not so, should not be so high, so we sampled. So those reds talk about the priority 1 area. Then the kind of the orange or the rust color is the priority, 2, which is only during wet weather. All the dogs, all the responses came up positive. And priority 3 is a mixed alert. So even in ambient conditions, they had mixed responses. Even in wet weather, they had mixed responses. So it's kind of inconclusive either way. So that's your priority 3, and then your priority 4 is those 2 locations, and they are perfectly, seems to be all right. So next one, please. So this is a summary, like what were the locations, or as you can see,
Can you go back one? So the one by the ocean could be, and this is something we probably have to do in the future, figure out the tides, because if it's incoming tide, you might be getting clean water from the ocean,
Exactly.
which is diluting the, so that might be just salt water that it takes.
Right.
testing,
So this is just a summary, so.
Can I ask a question? Where the green is by the bridge, is that where Comstock
Yeah,
is?
that's the Comstock.
Yes. Okay.
Yes.
That is our other stream
Yes.
center, which is neatly correlated.
Yeah.
Isn't that funny? It's
Yeah.
funny.
With,
And so this is just a summary of the same thing that you saw in the previous map. And next one, please. So these are the priority, just to give it a much more, detailed viewing. So I just put this one together. So these are, as you can see, 4 locations. Then you have the other one, just an expansion of that particular, priority location. So moving forward, what is going to be the recommendation? So these canines have screened, and they are indicative of a problem. And past records and past monitoring shows that there have been problems here. So moving forward, how to, kind of take solutions to, address that is going to be, unless now you know there is a problem, but now you have to quantify what's the magnitude of the problem. So for that, it's going to be done only with your analytical verification. There are various types of analytical verification. Some, there is one approach where you do like microbial source tracking right away. But that's a very, very expensive tool, and you don't even know what it's going to show or what's going to come up. But the next step is you really need to enumerate or get that number. So is it like 100 fecal bacteria or 10,000 fecal bacteria or 50,000? So for that, you need to test. So the recommendation that we're proposing, and we are going to be collaborating with the Deal Lake Commission, is to go back to these locations that have a priority 1 and a select, set of about 7 locations in priority 2. So we'll have a total of about 11 locations to just try and verify first. So we are going to be testing the samples using lab methodologies, like the classic wet bacteria testing methodology. And we will be repeating the whole process, like do it under ambient weather, do it under wet weather. And that's...
Smart. I have an idea. Just thought of it. I'd like you to give this presentation to the Sewer Authority of Ocean Township, Township Ocean Sewer Authority. And we'll sit down with them, we'll arrange a meeting, because I think 90% of our problems are right out here, right in front of Lock Harbor with the pumping station. If there's a leak in one of the pipes, you're going to see it all over those spots. So that's one region, right? I think, I'm thinking we could talk to them about putting some type of dye system in to see if they have leaks in the pressurized system, because, you guys don't know, all the material, all the sewage from Wanamass, from Interlake, and from West Islanders, West Deal in the back section here, all comes down, is brought under the lake on new pipes, believe it or not, and runs right down Grassmere to the pumping station. And it's pumped in a forced way up to Roosevelt Avenue in Ocean Township. On the other hand, Allenhurst and Lock Harbor, I believe, gets pumped the other way towards the south, goes under Deal Lake by Edgemont, goes into the pumping station. Then again, it goes to the same pipe that all the other sewage is going, and that heads.
So you're saying you think there's a leak in the leaks in the
It could
pipe?
be, sure. They 2 pipes been cut twice in the last 10 years. So we know there's been cuts in the pipe, they've been repaired. Are they good repairs? Are the pipes solid? I think that could really show us real quickly if there's a problem. Without spending a lot of money, it just be dyes. But I think we'll have to talk this
We
one.
have a pumping station.
I don't want to open it to the public right now. I don't want to do it. So, but if we can take the other locations, the ones that are red, I guess the yellow one, and those we can do, what you're saying, right? Because the ones up Terrace Pond and the ones at Fireman's Pond, it's got to be a leak, to me, it's got to be a leak. Because we've had two hits, right?
Yes.
Wet and cold, and
It's like 4, actually, all
Right.
response, so it's like 4 different responses, yeah.
And it's funny because the interlake or the Fireman's Pond, water comes from like in back of Sunset, or one of us in school, and also the rest of Interlake. So it's in that area somewhere. It's a small area. So it's probably a leaky sewer pipe. That's my guess. So they could probably figure that out.
Yeah, just one point, when we did the wet weather, especially in the D-Lake locations, we actually did it as it was raining and it was collected from the outfall. So it was not like, water that, flowed into the lake and we were collecting. So we have, I forgot to put a picture here, we have a long pole and all that, sterile water bottles and everything, but we did pick it up from the outfall.
And you're saying we should take additional samples and send them to a lab for examining, right?
Yes.
It's probably, if we can get the cost figure on that,
Yes.
I'm sure
We're
we'll be.
working on it. There's like one thing is like, for that particular thing, I think Clean Ocean Action has to be more actively involved in the science perspective because it's citizen science, yes, it helps, but then, when we're sending to the lab or analyzing to the lab, then we kind of will try to maintain the same consistency. Like one hand collected the sample or 2 hands collected, and we are minimizing the errors.
Right. And you know the state is not too hot on dogs, right? They don't believe the dogs work. I believe the dogs work based on.
The dogs are screening, it does help, it does tell you, locations that you probably will not even have thought about. And especially where there are maps that are lacking, where you have accessibility issues, especially when the dogs come on the field investigation, you can let them roam and they can, sniff and tell you and, yeah.
I'll open it up. I don't want to open it to the public. We're going to hold that off. But stick around and you might ask some more questions. But thank you. Your recommendations are basically to do additional testing. You can give us the fund in writing and the cost, and I think we can bring it up in the next meeting.
Absolutely.
But thank you very much. It was great work. Those dogs are wonderful. Okay, we're going to move on. Lock Arbor tree planting. It's been an interesting project, to say the least. I thought it came out wonderful. We worked with Lock Arbor well on the project. There were some neighbors that did not like the project, and we're working with Lock Arbor on that, and we'll know more next meeting. But if you haven't seen it, there's 8 benches, 4 on the east end of Lock Arbor, and 4 over by the ocean, and there's seagrass in between, and there's some plantings at the end of the street with some rock areas at the end of the streets with more foliage. So, and the donor gave us some nice $30,000 donation from the grant in the aim of making it environmentally friendly and also aesthetically pleasing to the eye, and make it more available to the public. So I think it looks very, very nice. Fall cleanup went great. We got about 2 tons of material out of there, I believe, in that range. Great turnout. We had 155 people. Carol was one of the coordinators, Aaron, and there was a couple others floating around. There was a lot of moving parts, and it was great to see we got it accomplished. Filled up the truck, and we did even more after that with some floating logs and debris. So thank everybody for coming out. CDM Mall update. Not any concrete, but I can tell you, talking to a lot of folks, we're going in the right direction on CD Mall. I'll talk more later about something else, but it was all good. The Healing Watershed Alliance and myself met with Senator Gopal and Tom Arnone, and that's moving, and Laura did a great job on getting that meeting together. And I'll tell you, I think in the next 2-3 years we'll have a stormwater base up in CB. I really believe that's going to happen. So, and that's going to solve a lot of problems on the southern section of it. we're not gonna.
Asbury.
I'll wait till next week. Asbury Avenue, storm grate issues over there. They did a great job, the county upgrading Asbury Avenue, but there's a couple open, wide open grates. And it's being, we have the complaint into the county and they said they're gonna fix it, so no news on that. That's it for old business. New business. 2020 weed treatment program. I want to put a motion on the table that we authorize Steve Socia to, starting in the first couple weeks, prior to the next meeting, write up an RFP for weed treatment and weed removal. So it'll be a combination deal. We'll go out for quotes, see what the pricing is, and we'll go from there and we'll discuss it at the next meeting. So that's the motion on the table, to authorize Steve Socia to prepare the RFP for weed chemical treatment of weeds and also weed removal.
I have a question about
It's second? Okay.
Yeah, okay. The weed removal part, Steve has sent something to.
I read that thoroughly. And
Nothing about.
the motion was to include that. It's gonna, we'll see what the numbers are, right? We'll talk to Steve in January and we'll vote on the RFP. So that's what we're gonna do.
Well, I'm for the RFP
Right.
for have him weed control, weed treatment.
Well, weed treatment's a part of that. That's in there. That's it. It's in the motion.
So you're offering
Yep.
some and second.
Right here.
All in favor?
All right.
Aye.
Yeah. Is that the only thing with weed treatment? Because
No,
I'd like to add some.
I'm moving right on.
I'd like to add something to the weed treatment, that's part of.
Are you sure?
Yeah,
Okay.
I would because, as you know, Steve was going to speak this evening on weed treatment and he couldn't. So I know that you had wanted to move it to February, Dawn, but I believe that because we will need to make a decision on this next month in January, that it would be good for him to, he said he was willing to do it in January. If we were to say, set up a 6:30 workshop for him to come, that would give him enough time to both address us and the public about the weed treatment options, so we understand what's involved, what the options are, why he's recommending.
I think the commissioners will have full access to the information. I'll be sending out his synopsis to the commissioners. I think that's going to be enough. If commissioners need, they have another session, we can have a private session before the meeting and talk about it, workshop. But I
Don't
really,
we need to advertise that if we're going to do it?
we can. But February, we're going to have another meeting with the Deal Lake Watershed Alliance, and January's our new meeting.
I
That's a
understand.
kickoff meeting. So
I understand.
it's a lot
And I would-
it's a lot on the table.
Right, and I wouldn't bring it up other than that there is a timeline to
So,
consider.
Jeannie, we have that. So write-up's going to be done, RFP's going to be processed. We can talk about it at the January meeting.
Okay, so you'll
We'll
allow
talk about it
enough
during the
time
meeting.
for him to
During the meeting, we can talk about it.
explain.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we're going to be talking about. We're
Okay,
going to be talking about the weed.
all right, because he
The
does
RFP.
need an adequate period.
Well, everybody's going to have the RFP, everybody's going to have the
Good.
paper he wrote, right? So
Yeah.
we don't need a separate meeting on that. It's going to be a meeting, a Deal Lake Commission meeting in January. Okay?
It'll happen during the meeting.
Happen during the
Okay,
But it's not going to be a 10-minute, 20-minute dissertation. It's going to be a 2, 3-minute discussion with questions, whatever that turns out. Okay?
I wouldn't limit the time. I'd give him the time that he needs to cover the information. Just in the report that he gave us, it was 4 pages, and that was a summary.
But you got to remember that it's the RFP. It's not the final discussion. It's not the final decision. It's just a request for proposal to go out. So you still have a whole nother month, maybe 2 months before it's awarded. You got to remember that, right? The RFP is
I
going to
know
be
what the
released.
timeline is, Don.
The RFP's up. Hold on. The RFP's released in January. We're not going to do a vote on it until the end of January 8th.
Right,
It goes out. We're not going to have the bids back until February. Then we review the bids.
right.
And Steve's going to make a recommendation at that point in time. So at the February March meeting. It's probably going to be a February meeting.
Okay,
Okay.
I just think it's good to have the education, but I'm glad that we're voting on the
Okay.
RFP
Vote.
and that that's going to happen.
You want to read that? You want to read?
I'm not reading.
You read that letter real quick. Yeah, you can synopsize you want. I have a lawyer read it better.
Jess Goldstein of 1611 Drummond Court in Asbury Park. The rear garden of my property borders Deal Lake. I've grown concerned about an increasing amount of weeds and general lack of care that I see spreading as I look across the lake from my home. The weed growth becomes more abundant as one looks further west towards the Wickapecka Bridge. This weed growth inhibits movement on the water, and I'm concerned that if it's allowed to spread further, it might slow down water circulation, reduce oxygen levels on the lake. I've been living at this address for about 10 years, but I understand that 13 years ago, when the weeds were so overgrown, a very expensive harvesting service had to be hired to remove the weeds. I wouldn't like to wait until the situation gets that critical again before something is done to prevent the overgrowth, especially if we have adequate solutions now. I've spoken with the Asbury Park Deal Lake Commissioner Jean Tower about this matter. She's encouraged me to attend the commission meeting to ask questions and express my concerns, obtain more information and hear other views, but since I'm unable to attend, I'm ready to express my concern and ask that your scientists provide information about weed treatments. I will watch the media on Asbury Park TV to hear what they have to say. I encourage that you treat the weeds as soon as it is appropriate time to begin the process. Please let's not wait and see the repeat of what we had years ago. One last note, lowering the lake unless absolutely necessary is also worrisome to me. We all know how harmful it is to the abundant wildlife ecosystem on the lake. Every time this happens without good reason, owners and property owners should not be allowed to sway this process. Please abide by the rules of your DEP lake lowering limits. Best, Jess Goldstein.
I'll send a little note back to Mr. Goldstein. Thank you, Mr. Goldstein, for that information, and we're going to be, hopefully we can make the next meeting and we can talk about the week. Okay. Let's move on. Storage. Authorization of 2020 rental storage unit for Deal Lake Commission on an annual amount not to exceed $1,600. It's less than that, but I'll put a little extra in there.
Someone please offer.
Offer.
Second.
A second.
Elmhurst.
Yes.
Asbury Park.
Yes.
Interlaken.
Yes.
Ocean.
Yes. Okay. Deal Lake Watershed Alliance Workshop date, we're trying to have this for a full hour in February. So it'll be from 6 to 7. And it's going to be a workshop between their board, correct, and our commission. So it'll be a very nice meeting. We've already talked. We have a guideline that we're going to use. So hopefully everybody else agrees with that. Or, you know, whatever. It's going to be open forum. It's going to be great. It's wonderful to have a positive group helping on council. And you need that public support, and public needs a lot, and they sway things. And it's good that you guys are engaged. Neighbors that are engaged know a lot more and can help, which is great. So thank you. So we'll see you in February. I don't think we need a motion on that, do we? No. So we'll just plan that accordingly. We'll have to put the marketing, advertising out for that. Okay. Hollywood Golf Course. So Hollywood Golf Course. Yeah, as you know, it's off Roselle, between Roselle and Deal Road. I got a phone call on some activities over there. So we're in discussion with Deal Lake Golf Course. And it looks like they're willing to discuss the dam that they had back there that was compromised years ago. So Peter Vachny is dusting off his plans for
We have plans.
the old dams, and we're going to revisit them with, yeah. So they were authorized to cut some trees down that were years ago, and they just recently cut them up in 8-foot sections, and somebody notified me, and I made some phone calls. It was approved, but it's still
Approved by who?
Ocean Township,
Ocean Township approved what?
cutting the trees.
Cutting trees along the lake?
They have authority, they have certain authority. Now, it's not the lake. It's
Oh.
not the lake. It's in the watershed.
Oh,
But, you know, we're not big, we love trees, right? So
yeah.
trees take water. So,
That's right.
so we're having some discussions with them, so we're gonna be trying to work some arrangements out where we can get some trees and get our dam back. So the dam was there in the 70s, early 70s and prior, and that took a lot of the water away from that ripping the stream. As soon as that dam was compromised and wasn't restored, and Middlebrook was put in, the water just rushed down and ripped the stream up back and forth. And all that sediment went into from Harvey Brook to Deal Lake and filled up the area next to Deal Country Clubs.
Or island.
Yeah, the island, right. So, you almost could walk across from the golf course to West Elm.
I guess, Ocean Township is one of the few towns that has a tree ordinance. They don't have it anymore?
They have a very weak tree ordinance. It's
Well,
horrible.
they have one.
I'm the Ocean Township rep. I can tell you right now, tree ordinance is not working. The paper is working. I mean, it's very
That's too
weak.
bad.
After Sandy, it was weakened. Because people wanted the rights to cut the trees down. They felt unsafe with trees.
They
Unfortunately.
don't like.
And I know your
No,
neighbors.
I-
Yeah, your neighbors.
I'm trying to get one in Asbury Park.
And the final item I have for new business is the Great Lakes, New Jersey. Lake Apacon, Greenwood Lake, and Deal Lake, we are considering the Great Lakes, New Jersey. We've been meeting since the Lake Apacon had the major issue of blue-green algae. I gave them a call because we're kind of experiencing that, right? Blue-green algae. And this last year was their first experience with shutdown. And the way the state actually notifies folks, right? They have little signage they put up. The county folks come out and they put signs all over you. But basically it's a warning sign or a danger sign. And they're basically the same signs. Don't swim, don't drink the water, don't eat the fish. Don't get wet. Your skin's going to melt if you touch the water. They're horrible signs. So, and there's no coordination between the towns and the commissions are involved. The state just puts the signs up and done with it. In Lake Apacon's case, they did right around 4th of July, where they put big signs up on 80 and 15. They had signs up, Lake Apacon closed, and it just destroyed their whole summer. So we've been meeting, talking about ways we can help the state see the light. And you just saw recently the governor say that he's going to set aside $15 million blue-green algae. Deal Lake was involved with that. So, and we're going to try to get a piece of that, maybe for some project we're thinking about. So it's very exciting, and we're in the thick of things. Lake Apacon folks, and Greenwood Lake folks are very appreciative and very unique lakes. Greenwood Lake borders New York and New Jersey. New York is doing backstrokes, and they're closed in New Jersey. So New York had a whole different set of rules for managing and identifying blue-green algae. They really didn't have a hazardous issue. They had a blue-green algae issue, but it wasn't hazardous to your health. And that's what we're trying to get the state to do more testing and notify the public accordingly. So, and a new sign system. So it'll be a yellow caution sign and then a danger sign with different rules and different. What's that? It's called close, right. But blue-green algae is big. I mean, the state was right. I mean, they were overly protective, and I think we're trying to raise the bar of the warning level. So.
I appreciate you also perpetuating the name that I suggested.
Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah. It's carried.
I'm not sure Great Lakes in New Jersey is going to hold up, but I appreciate you putting that in there for me.
I was happy to get on the list, right?
Trademark it.
That's it. Any other new business for the commission?
I just would like to say
Go
something. This is my last official capacity as the co-chair and the Interlaken commissioner, and for 8.5 years it's been wonderful, and I finally see some of the things that Don and I spoke about when we first started actually going to happen. So any people in the audience have to realize how long these projects take to get to fruition. And I had been promised that I'd see the electrification by this time. It did not happen, but because of set of circumstances, I will be here the entire winter. So I will get to see it in person when it happens. But I want to thank everybody, our experts. It's a great learning
heard that you learned that these people really care about this. We actually talk about the lake when we're not here. It's really true. And Carol is going to be a better commissioner than I am, because she's much more eco-friendly than I was. And again, I want to express my thanks to everyone here.
We thank you, Don, and I'll give you a round of applause. And we'll bring you and Aaron back. Aaron's going to be leaving the commission also. We'll bring you guys back sometime in 2020.
Have a reunion, you know.
We'll have a reunion with appropriate gifts. So we don't have regular
Gifts.
Yeah, well, certificates of appreciation.
There you go.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank
so,
you, Don.
go ahead.
Just real quick, in the 319, I know we had spoken about the meetings having food being provided. Is that something that we need to discuss?
Do we need to authorize that?
If you're going to spend the money.
Motion for,
What part of your budget is coming out?
it's coming out 319 grand.
Yeah.
Okay. That's permissible under the,
Oh, yeah, with that, sure, yeah.
It actually
Educational.
specifies
Yeah,
Rush
it's an
meeting,
educational
Rush
body.
and education.
So, authorize
Well, at this point, not to exceed.
the commission, authorize the commission to spend up to $500, not to exceed $500
Yeah, it's only one.
for food and drink, for drink for lunch. Yeah, it's got to be that much.
Yeah,
Yeah, we're gonna spread the wealth out, do a little Frank's.
It might even be not to exceed 500 for all 3 meetings either. So,
Okay,
Someone please offer.
I did. Second.
Second.
that's it. Oh, you second the last one?
My last second, I'll second.
Still got time. Allenhurst? Allenhurst?
You have to have
Yes.
open to the public. I know.
Oh, you haven't done
Yes, what?
Asbury Park
Yes.
and Julian?
Yes.
Motion?
Yeah.
Okay. Motion to open the meeting to the public. Someone please
So,
vote. Second?
Here.
Okay.
okay, public, thanks for coming. Anybody out there? Margaret?
I come as a friend saying this. My name is Margaret Frenicola. I live in Lock Arbor. My husband is the mayor of Lock Arbor. And I just wanted to say, there have been numerous complaints about the project in Lock Arbor, and I just feel like I should say that because obviously I'm living with the repercussions of it at my home and, you know, in my husband's work. And I think that, and I know you have dealt with it too, but I don't think you've heard the end of that. And
Well,
I don't think that the people who are complaining realize that there are meetings like that. We've tried to explain to them, like, you can come to these meetings, you can come to our village meetings, but there were some very upsetting and almost violent comments last night, so.
What's your objections with them?
close their property.
They are so upset about the benches, about the garbage cans, and about the grass. And the grass blocking their views. And they thought it was fine before. They don't understand why anybody did anything. They thought it was beautiful before. That is my basic interpretation of last night's public meeting.
I would say that was
Yes.
the words they said.
Yes, and some of the people, I mean, that was probably an hour and 45 minutes of people complaining. And supposedly there are 20 to 24 houses that are all going to bond together and fight it being all put in. So, and that's my interpretation of last night.
And I think there were some people that had that.
One
But
person was so
I just
upsetting
hope-
to me, like
I just
was-
hope that it's not because they want to keep the public away from the lake. And that's one of my concerns.
I didn't really get that impression. Like, they all seemed very, like, I don't mind when the fishermen come and set up their own chairs and stuff like that. I did not get that impression at all. I just think that, and they all sort of said things like, I always had my gardener just mow it when it got long, like I never minded when it was just like that, but now they think it will be hard
Well-
to maintain. And the maintenance is like an issue, because now they won't be able to take the mower and just go along it.
Look, we're here to work with you.
Yeah, appreciate that
We
very much.
work with you on putting it in,
Yes, appreciate
and
it.
we'll
I
work with
was,
you on any other.
I people come and knock on our door and air their grievances, and it just is really unsettling, like how some of the people were behaving.
They rang my phone.
Yeah, I know.
For 4 hours
They
I
come
talked
to my
people.
door, so. But one person in particular, it was saying things that were like very unsettling, so.
I agree it was unsettling. And to be honest with you, that individual I saw physically trash the lake, so.
No,
I mean, I saw it in my own eyes, and I talked to him about it. And he knows who I am, and I know who he is. And I'm unsettled with that,
Yeah, it is.
because I don't think they appreciate the lake, or at least he didn't.
I wonder about that myself. Yeah, I don't.
Trash cans, I think the benches look great. I think the trash cans look good. Could they be moved to a different location in some of them? Maybe, but they're pretty much far away from any homes.
I thought so too. I didn't triple checked.
The people didn't realize that there was even a park in the town, which really bothered me. They didn't know the park.
There's many things that they didn't understand that there's a village meeting every month, some of the people,
Right.
so, that they're welcome to come to. And I told every single person I here wrote it down for them about tonight's meeting, if they really were serious about it.
But we did, I mean, technically, we have funds to maintain that for a year.
I was wondering about that, thank you for
To
saying
cut
that.
back, we're going to do that in the spring. Our recommendation from landscaper was to keep it the way it is now, and to cut them in the spring. So that's what the plan is. And not to throw them in the lake. But thank you, Mark. Anybody else?
Well, thank you.
Anyone else?
Okay.
Yep, what's up? Say your name and location and...
Ernest Mignoli, I live in Santander, Steel Lake Drive. I've lived there since 2007. I am a fisherman, and certainly one of the attractions here for me was the Deal Lake and the ocean. And I have to say, I also thought at one point, being born in Long Branch and raised in this area, that maybe one day we'd have swimming again in the lakes. But I think you're the Asbury person, are you?
Yes.
So I'm kind of learning that all the municipalities are involved here, which is a good thing because of the configuration of the lake, obviously. But one of my concerns has always been, and I like to listen to you talk about all the organic pollutants and geese and dogs and humans, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But I tend to be, as a fisherman, a little bit more interested in inorganic kind of pollution, like lead and asbestos and gypsum and construction materials from old buildings. I mean, let's truly understand this is an area that's got buildings that, like Convention Hall and the building I'm in, the Santander, built in the 20s. And back then, they thought some of these chemicals and toxic things were like miracle minerals. I mean, I think they used to put asbestos in the bakery on the bottom of the oven so that the bread wouldn't stick. I mean, they just thought it was such a great thing. And now we find out what it really is. And so the reason I came tonight is because, and I like your line, I'm going to say I come as a friend. Even though I'm an member in the Santander, I'm very against how the building is run. I'm against some policy they have about construction, about EPA, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Santander is 82 condominiums. It's probably one of the largest developments or buildings right on the Deal Lake. I mean, it's across the street. It's hard to get the early and old configurations of sewer and drains, et cetera, but back in those days, it's actually horrifying what was connected where and what was vented where and what goes where. So I don't think with all the modifications that we really, even today, know where everything's coming from or going, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. This year, there were just 3 or 4 alarms about maybe sewer pipe breaks along Asbury, and we all know from back in the days when the Berkeley let loose and pretty much devastated a few towns. So where am I going with this? I'd like to somehow figure out a way, since I Oprah and I get a lot of documents about my building and their ventures. I don't basically agree with the non-EPA, the non-OSHA, the non-approach that they take. They bring in non-EPA contractors. They bring in owners who want to do things the way they want to do it, regardless of what's prudent for the building. So they'll take out a heavy wall, they'll take dumpsters out, dumpsters are left in the driveway, it rains, everything goes into the gutter, it goes into the sewer, it goes into the Deal Lake, eventually it goes into the ocean. It's horrifying. So when you think, and it's not just the Santander, I mean, 200 Deal Lake Drive is involved now, you see all the work they're doing there, and rarely when you ride by do you see curtains, do you see OSHA, do you see people the way they're supposed to do those jobs. I mean, if you ever read the EPA standards, especially around a lake.
Ernie, I got a great solution for you, and I know where you're going, that's great. Because I've walked along the lake, I walk almost twice a week around the lake, and I've seen outfall pipes coming, not from Santander, up sister building, white plume going out all over there. I'm going nuts. So I called the number, I'm on my phone, I call 1-800-WARN-DEP, that's the key number. These guys come right out. They were there within 3 hours, they were there. The guy was calling me from the back of the building. What happened was, they were power washing the basement, the parking lot, and that water was going into a drain, going right into the lake. And the bottom line was, he couldn't do anything. The DEP couldn't do anything.
Well,
It was pre-existing, it was a commercial, it was a residential building, but the key is calling DEP. If you really think there's a problem, 1-800-WARN-DEP. That's the number to call.
If I could just finish with the fact
And they will act. You know, you see an oil plume, if you see a plume like white plume coming out of the building, and if you know there's something going on, definitely call.
Well, again, I just want to get on the record and finish. I don't think that they really do the job that they should. I've found over the decade or more that...
That's our only source, buddy.
Well, I'm saying, I've had to be where contractors have been in my building taking lead and asbestos from a unit that they demolished and going down and dumping it right in the sewer next to my building. And I have to watch that. And then when you call, it takes 40 minutes to get someone. And then when you get someone, they say, well, you have to talk to Washington, D.C. So the last thing I want to say is right now, as we speak, there was a very intricate job, the roof. Now, the roof was tested to be loaded with asbestos and lead. And they got a permit from the city of Asbury, from Mr. Sela. And on the permit, Mr. Sela put, you must have EPA, OSHA, all the standards, everything in place. If you ever read that, when you walk by a job like that, it looks like an operating room. If it's done according to those standards.
Right.
However, I'm living in that building, they're doing nothing. As a matter of fact, they're piling the asbestos up on the roof, right, with no cover on it. It's blowing, it's raining, it's going out the roof, down the drains. They're pumping it over the side, it's going down our driveway, into Park Avenue gutter, it's going into the sewer, and it's going into the Deal Lake. So I come and say,
I have to stop.
okay, I'm done.
I have to stop. But please call 1-800-WARN-DEP, because that's the New Jersey guys. They wear a white coat, they work for you and me, and they come out. And if it's a legitimate case, they will write it up. They're really good. So it's not DEP, it's the New Jersey DEP, not EP, I should say.
Is that on your Facebook page?
It is right on the front page of our website.
It's on the website.
Right on the website.
Yeah.
So between the web and the Facebook, you recommend the web page better for information?
I'll show
It's a mix.
you where it is before you leave.
Okay.
Yeah. But thanks for that. I'm sorry to hear that.
Why not
It's
call the
heartbreaking.
city? The city has to give you the approval for those permits.
Well, he's not having success with the city. That's
Have
what
you
he's
called the city?
Yeah, Ernie's
Yeah.
I gotta stop it there.
Okay.
I gotta stop it there. Any other questions? Okay. I thank everybody coming. Have a great holiday. Oh, motion to close the meeting. Mr. Neeson.
Second?
That's it.
Okay.
Good luck to all. Mr. Neeson, thank you for your service.